Okay, good morning or afternoon. Thanks for joining our live stream here from BlueModus, our second episode of the series we're calling Beyond the Build, talking about all the things that go into a successful digital or website project that are way more than code. Today, we're joined by Brandon Hess, who's a digital strategy director at BlueModus, kind of our resident guru on everything SEO, digital marketing. I don't even know, Brandon. It's probably very, very wide. But do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and what you do a little
Yeah,
bit?
no, I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm Brandon Hess. I'm a director of digital strategy here at BlueModus. Mainly work on a wide range of things around content strategy, analytics, SEO, just general marketing strategy. So spend a lot of time on a wide range of things. Yeah. Um,
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining, sharing your expertise. I put in the chat, but if you have questions as we go through this, please post them, and we would love to get some interactivity going. But Brandon, why don't we start out kind of with the zoomed out question? The topic of this stream, we titled it "Maximizing SEO Through Content Strategy." Um, you know, I'm a complete novice here. What is content strategy? How would you define that in your role?
That's a good question. So content strategy gets defined a lot of ways, but the way I look at it is it's that idea of the high level strategy of planning around creating, publishing, promoting, and managing your content with a purpose. So if you boil that down, it's just understanding your audience, writing content that matters to them, and then using that content to achieve whatever goals you have, whether it's leads or revenue or just brand awareness. But that's really how it boils down, because it gets confused a lot with the tactics involved, like writing content. It's more of the high level version of that, of just understanding the kind of content you need to write or create than to hit your goals.
Okay,
Yeah.
so content strategy is kind of on a higher level than the content creation, right? It's like before we even start creating our content,
Yeah.
we need to think about what we're going to create, where we're going to use it, what notes that going to hit, all that type of stuff, right?
Yeah, it's the guidelines that you kind of box all that in. So this way, it just gives you sort of the template that you should write towards, or who you should aim for, or what your gaps are, right? So that if you're just starting without that, a lot of times what clients will do if they don't have that in place is they just start hitting whatever's popular. And by the time they get done, they have this very varied range of content that doesn't really hit the goals that they're after. And so that strategy is really wrapped around it and sort of kind of keeps the guardrails on for you. So you see the way you can measure actually too to see if it's being effective. Yeah.
Cool. That totally makes sense. And, I think you mentioned maybe if you don't have a strategy, you just opt for what's popular, what you imagine is popular. I also, I wonder how often without a strategy, it's easy for internal teams or marketing teams to just focus on the things that they care about, right? And maybe not the
Yeah,
things that the users are actually looking for and the data actually indicates, right? Is that fair? Did that happen sometimes?
that's fair, because marketing teams get a lot of pressure, similar to a sales team, where you're trying to put out a
Sure.
lot of content or campaigns to drive in leads. And so a lot of times, if you don't have that in place, if you're a marketer, you're just being told, hey, go out and find the topics that we should be writing about. And a lot of times that's going to be whatever these keyword tools pull back to you, like, oh, this is the most popular by volume, so I'm going to write 6 articles on that. But if you don't really understand if that's actually important to your customers or your potential customers, you might be writing that, getting traffic for it, but the traffic's not converting. And so then you're getting doubly pressured because, oh, we have all this time involved in this content you've been writing, but it's not performing to the goals you're being judged on. So that's really where the strategy comes in. It's just trying to help both the marketing team, but also the company at large being effective with the content and all the resources they're putting behind that.
Yeah. And maybe if you're writing about what's already popular, you're kind of missing the point that there's opportunities for things that aren't driving traffic today that you should be talking about, right?
Yeah, because maybe you're competing with a bigger publisher out there, and so now you're trying to compete against something that's impossible to win against, right? If you're a small company, try to compete against a Wikipedia article on something important, you're going to have a hard time winning against that. Versus if there's a niche, I always pronounce that word wrong, a niche area where you're trying to focus on that your customers are really asking about, you could be that source, right? That maybe a larger source isn't focused on. And that's really that strategy comes in and thinks about. It's like, hey, what are our users actually interested in that we can solve, that we are the experts that maybe other people aren't? And that's really where the importance comes in, is you're trying to
Opportunity
really
analysis,
refine.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. So I think it's somewhat obvious how content strategy A big part of it is getting good info and good content to your actual end users. But going back to the title of the stream, right? Before that even happens, before the users even end up on your site, what type of role does content strategy play with modern SEO?
Well, it's trying to understand all the things that's changed just in the last year or two, right? There's been huge amounts of change, and there's always change in SEO, but just in the last year or two, there's been a bunch of things that have changed on the Google side, from the helpful content update that I know we'll talk about a little bit, but also just AI. AI has really sort of flipped things over a little bit in terms of SEO. How people are searching is changing. How that search is being viewed is changing. And so content needs to adapt to that, because if it doesn't, you're going to be sort of stuck in those old best practices that may not be as effective anymore. And so a big part of content strategy is not just the writing and creating of that content, but the promoting and the delivery of that content to your users. And so understanding like the changing market that is SEO is going to be really important, because there's a lot of shifts in how that's both delivered to people, but also how they're consuming it has changed pretty drastically just in the last couple of years.
Yeah, that's a great segue. I think you mentioned it. I'd love to kind of get your thoughts a little bit more. So it's been a little bit of a while now since Google made this helpful content update, right? So what changed, and what was the immediate impact? And then what are you seeing as it kind of gets settled in a little bit more? It's kind of been our reality for a bit now.
Yeah, so the changes are coming out pretty frequently still, but the big, if you took it as the high level, really what their approach has been was to try to reward content that was created to help users. Because if you searched Google in the last couple of years, which most have, you realized you probably had to weed through a bunch of results that were very much written to be optimized, right? So it's that content that's not really helpful. It's just been written to get to the top of search. And Google's trying to react to that, because also they saw their search usage change and they were under threat. So they wanted to go back and say, hey, we're going to reward content that's actually helpful to the user's intent. And so really what that means is that they put a big importance on content that focuses on intent. And intent is a big word that I'll talk about in a bit here.
Okay,
but
intent. Okay.
yeah, it's this big idea. Like if you're writing a content on how to bake a cake, and the entire article is a sales pitch for your cake recipe, that's not really what people were searching for to get that. They wanted the recipe, but you're spending the entire article talking about, the history of cake and the history of how many times you've baked it. That's not really what they wanted. So writing content that gets to the matter and to the actual urgency of that question that's being asked is important. But also it doesn't bait and switch. You don't write an article about a topic that once they get there, they realize, oh, this is a sales pitch, or, oh, this is a completely different thing than what was offered to me in the description. That happens a lot on Google, and they're trying to rectify that through helpful content. So really, it's content that's original. It's more personality driven, and it's to sort of take aim at this AI problem where someone can have ChatGPT write 1,000 articles for you. You post it on the blog. It's good content. It writes questions and it answers questions, but is it really helpful? Is it really original? And then it really focuses on this new EAT approach that they've coined, is this idea that it focuses on a lot of areas of expertise and authority, things like that.
Cool. No, I love the bake a cake analogy, because I'm just thinking about how clutch the jump to recipe button is, when you're trying to cook something. And that's something that everybody complained about, the 5 pages of personal background before you got to the ingredients list when you're in the grocery store trying to make something. And now they've kind of introduced those buttons on most sites, and that's been a game changer. It sounds like Google is almost trying to replicate the outcome of that. When someone's searching for something, how quickly can we get them the actual answer they're looking for? Is that kind of fair?
No, that's 100%, because that's really how they get more use, right? You go to Google to get an answer for things. And that's why you've also seen this new trend of people adding Reddit, appending it to the end of their search results, is because they're not getting the answers on Google. So they're going to Reddit to get more human answers to more reviews that aren't trying to be optimized. Because that recipe is a great example of, they've had to add a jump to recipe button because the intent is so off on most recipes that you have to spend 6 paragraphs learning about their grandparents who cooked that recipe. And all you want to know is how many eggs needs to be added to this.
Because we're impatient, right? We all have not enough time, and we don't, I love your grandparents. I'd love that it's a family recipe, but I am at the store. I need to know, I need to remind myself, what I'm trying to buy. So I want to come back to the Reddit thing, because I've seen that trend, and I think I've done it myself, right? Sometimes you're looking for unbiased information, You go straight to forums where real people are giving their opinions, right? But first, you mentioned something, and talking about cakes. It's lunchtime. This is only going to make things worse. But you mentioned the EAT acronym. So what does that stand for? EEAT, right? That's part of Google's new kind of formula.
That is. So it's existed for a bit, but they've sort of coined it now around this idea of how to sort of manage this helpful content approach. If you're trying to write content for it, they've created 4 categories to measure the content and the way you're presenting it. And it's basically experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and then trustworthiness. And how those boil down is they sound like what they are is experience is more of, do you have firsthand experience in the subject you're writing on? So like, did you go to the movie that you're reviewing, or did you just hear about the movie and now you're reviewing it, right? So it's that importance where you see on content for Google.
Maybe for like one of our customers, would it be kind of like, you have a track record in this industry, you have a reputation that helps make you an authoritative source for this specific intent or type of query. Is that fair?
Yeah, that crosses over quite a bit, of course. Yeah, because you want to be the electrician writing about electrical advice, right? You don't want to be a plumber writing about electrical advice, right? So there's a difference to Google now of, do you write about this content enough to be an authority? Do you have experience in this based on what we know about you? Do you have expertise? And they want to measure like, how have you demonstrated your knowledge on this? And that really looks at, from an SEO perspective, of if you look at your blog or whatever you create your content within, do you have a lot of articles or a lot of media about this subject, right? Or is this the first time you've ever written about this? That's where that expertise becomes important, because it's not just that you, the author, or you, the company, if you're Acme Widgets, of course, now you have a lot of stuff or experience in widgets, but like, does the content you write continually reinforce these 4 areas of, I have experience with this subject, I have expertise because I've written about it a ton, I also have authority, which is the amount of people that link to you and reference you as the authority on it. And that's the old idea of linking. But it's also like, does the website show your authority? Like, is it being presented in a way that's authoritative and trustworthy? And then that's the 4th item, the trustworthiness. And that's probably the more subjective one. It's the user experience of the site, the trust the site and the author sort of inhibit, like from a branding perspective, but also from just a reputation, right? If you don't have a good reputation in the industry and you're suddenly writing about it, that's going to also impact you too. So that social brand awareness is now part of it.
Yeah, that one seems like it would be maybe the hardest for Google to algorithmically or automatically detect, right? What can customers do to at least make sure they're not being dinged in the trust category?
Yeah, so from the user experience side of things, there's all the items that you're always measured against, like responsiveness, how fast does your site load, how does the site look? Does it look like it's a scam site, right? And that's hard that's more subjective. Like if you get there's like a 35 pop-ups, right, that feel like they're trying to steal your identity. That's a trustworthiness item if you're trying to also push content. But there's also just does the domain show trustworthiness? Does the design itself inhibit that? But then there's also the external sides of things. You have a ton of reviews that are negative about you. All those things are sort of getting wrapped into that. So
interesting. That's really good. Okay, so to make it a little bit actionable, obviously some of this is kind of Google magic that we don't always have insights into, but you want to write a lot of material about your subject, that's showing that you have experience and expertise in it. You want to be cited as an authority as much as possible, as like you said, has long time been a part of SEO with backlinks and stuff like that. And then your website needs to be modern, responsive, easy to use, avoid any type of deceptive paths or any type of weird user experience there. Those are kind of some of the ways to tailor your content towards the EEAT acronym. Is that right?
Yeah, I think those all hit the mark. And I think one of the bigger ways too that is a lot of clients have wrestled with some of the SEO tactics in the past have been, either keep all your content on one domain or go microsites, right? Where you have 35 domains that you manage that have the content spread. And this new EAT process really, really benefits clients or companies that have their content underneath one domain. So it's sort of a switch from that, because you've seen SEO for a while. Have 13 vanity URLs. So that singular domain has become more important now to consolidate things under, because that's how the EAT score is managed.
Because it's almost like if you had 35 microsites, each one would have to start fresh, building its own expertise, its own authority. If you bring that content under a single domain, Google starts seeing all 35 rolling up into the authority and the expertise of that domain. Is that how it's working a little bit?
Exactly. Yep. And so that's why you see sites like Forbes always show up really high in search, because they write about a ton of things. It's all subsequently underneath the Forbes.com domain. While if you're doing a microsite, you're wrestling exactly. Now you're just a single expertise, a single topic, which it's going to be harder. So yeah, the more
I think this is a great takeaway from this discussion. Just how things have changed when it comes to domain strategy a little bit when it comes to SEO. And I think this is also a great segue to something else I wanted to ask you about, which is the idea of content hubs, right? So that's kind of a little bit of what you're describing, right? Building, it's not like one giant dump of information under one domain. It's still keeping the idea that you maybe had in old microsites of information architecture and of kind of segmenting things into digestible topics, but it's under one domain. Is that so? What is kind of a content hub in this context, and what are you seeing trend wise here?
Yeah, content hubs get thrown around, right? You'll hear pillars, clusters, hubs, but really the idea is the structure that you organize your content within. And so if you're gathering underneath one domain, how well are you organizing all of the topics, all of the expertise that you have in a way that's easily discoverable by users? So, and that really what that means is if someone enters in through search on a topic around, if we use the baking cake side of things, how easy is it to find the next article, the next piece of content within that same realm of topic or anything that's related to that? And so it's the structure that becomes more important. That has a lot to do with internal linking and how you organize things. But if you think about a hub, the hub is more or less the high level big topic. So it's, if you're coming into recipes, that's the hub. And then it's organized in a way that talks really high level about that subject. And then everything underneath is usually either called the spokes or the clusters. And that's the really in-depth, in the weeds content that's related to that higher level topic. But it's, if you're coming into a subject around gardening, right? You have a gardening hub, and then everything underneath it, the spokes of that hub are like xeriscaping versus hardscaping, or what's the best plants for a sunny area on my lawn. Those are the spokes that all add up into your experience on gardening. You've wrote about gardening, what is gardening? But now you have all these articles about the very minutia of gardening. But you also have these ideas of hubs sort of exist alongside other ones. So you might have gardening, but you also might have like an economic hub for some reason. And you might have articles that are like, how is gardening being impacted by inflation? So those two things make those hubs related, but you might link to that within each one because there's subjects that cross certain subjects. And if you do that in a way using hubs and spokes, it makes it easy, one, for Google to go, oh, I entered into this gardening article, but now I understand that you have all these specific articles about the whole realm of gardening. But you also have articles on the economic side that somehow relate to gardening, right? And so they can explore your site and get an idea of how the relationships are built because you're showing them the relationships. Versus without a hub, you might just have a blog that's just the most recent article, and that's all you sorted by. And so Google just comes into it. There's no links to the next one. They have to go back out and then enter back in and sort of infer that relationship themselves.
So that kind of sounds like a lot of crossover into stuff that we talk about all the time when we're doing these, CMS implementation projects, which is taxonomy, and how you tag content and how it relates to each other. That all sounds important when it comes to content hubs, right? Like you want to think about overlap as well as related content, right? It sounds like you want to be able to suggest the most relevant possible articles to what that customer is looking at that time, right?
Yeah, because all those get put together. It's that idea of you're thinking of like the customer journey, you're thinking of the user experience, you're thinking of like the content relationships all at once, because that's part of that content strategy too, is this idea of not just writing it in a vacuum. So like the taxonomy and the experience, but also the layout of the site all becomes sort of nested together with that. Because if you're writing it in that idea, when you write the next article, there's already a structure for you to think of like, oh, we've written about these 5 very top of level, top of funnel topics, maybe we need to focus a bit more mid funnel or about down the road a bit, because you start to get an idea of like, oh, here's the greater
sequence it, connect it so that you're getting them deeper and deeper down the funnel, like you're talking about, right?
yeah. Yeah.
It's really interesting because it's making me think, it's almost like Google is, as much as possible, trying to mimic a real user, if you will, and value like good user experiences, because what what a user wants is to find more content that helps answer their questions and like be like, wow, this site's really valuable to me. They're really authoritative. I trust what they're telling me. They're sharing great information I didn't even know I was looking for. It sounds like those type of experiences are the ones that play into this EEAT and this helpful content and then get ranked even higher by Google, right?
Yeah, because it really shows that you understand the intent behind them. Like you understand, if you write an article about this and the next article you recommend them on your site is moving them down their journey that they're on, because you understand the spot they're in when they ask that question, that just lets Google know, oh, you understand this topic in such a way you can anticipate the next question. You can anticipate the next thing that might be important to them. And you might not always be right, but like you're at least attempting to understand, like, oh, if you're asking about X, your next question is going to be about Y. And great, we have this article that talks you through it. So if you think about it as a guide, right, you're starting at the introduction all the way down to advanced. That's how I think, from all the things we've talked about, that's what I would recommend from a content strategy is when you write an article, think about it as a series. Where does this fit in? If I was writing this as a series that put someone from start to finish, how does that fit into that process? Because that'll just help ensure that when Google gets there, but also when a user gets there, they feel like, oh, there's a structure, there's a sort of a science to this when I get here. It's not just a one-off article that was to try to get the volume from the search, but it's also here to educate me and work me through the next phase, the next question.
Great. So I think we could go more time on content hubs and the types of content hubs, and I would be curious to hear, but I don't want to not get to AI and SGE, which I talked about with Mike Wills last month on the same series, because obviously that's changing so much. I mean, I know we talk all the time with our customers about how prevalent zero-click searches have become. Many customers are not even going to the source site to answer their question anymore when they type something into Google or Bing because of these search snippets, stuff like that, which is already, we've had that in the past, but it's only becoming stronger with the AI summaries and stuff like that. So I guess my biggest concern if I'm a customer is, how does this change my business model? And, what do I do to still drive traffic if the search engines are going to take the valuable content and display it right on the landing page for every search result?
Yeah, because I think that the one that's going to impact the most is a marketing team, right? Where you're being judged on the performance of your content. Yeah, and the traffic is going to maybe go down. The better content you create, if that gets captured into like a featured snippet or an AI overview, someone may have just read your content on Google, never went to your site, and that content was great. You did such a good job that Google made that the number one answer. And it's this paradox right now for marketing teams. We're like, wait, I spent all this time. It ranked up the best it could, and again, got no traffic from it. So it's changing how measurement happens now. This idea of, oh, did we get an impression? No, because that's not very much, we look at impressions from SEO, but it's never been a main key performance indicator. But now that's becoming more important. Like, oh, I need to measure how many times our content is shown as an overview. But also, I think knowing that means that you probably need to look at, that's a top of funnel answer, right? Usually those AI overviews are a very like top level question of like, what is this? Or how do I do this? And thinking about, maybe you have to say the top of level content becomes less traffic, but now at that second level, that more advanced guide, that more comprehensive guide that you can't.
And that goes back to intent, right? Like that's kind of like, maybe if someone is able to get their answer with the zero click, they were early on in their journey, right? Their intent wasn't there to convert quite yet. That doesn't mean that your content being in the AI snippet didn't help advance them deeper into the funnel, because it likely did if you had good content answer their question. But so now, does that make, when people come to your site with intent, I would think it's even more important to make sure they actually convert. right? And then
Yeah.
also maybe when you're doing a measurement as a marketing team, you measure those deeper funnel clicks, put even more value on those, because likely 5 people were on the 0-click experience before they ever ended up on your site. So you need to kind of reweight how you're looking at traffic, perhaps.
Well, that's 100% it, because it's really it goes into what you said earlier too. People's attention span is different now, right? And they're being more conversational with how they search, so they're expecting that conversational answer. And so, if you're sending them to your site, and they do get to your site after that second question, are you making it easier for them to stay on your site and convert? Because that's going to be more important. So that goes back to the hub and making sure
User
it's really
experience,
easy. Exactly. So if
performance,
you're not
site speed, accessibility, all that stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because if traffic is going to be harder and your conversion rates that you're being held to for a marketing team are still existing, right? You're still going to be rated on revenue and leads generated, or et cetera. Now it's going to be the onus on conversion rate optimization of the site. Like, okay, the traffic we do get needs to convert at a higher rate possibly now. So we need to put more focus on the structure, how good our quality of our content is, how much our content pushes people deeper into the site to a converting action. So all those things become a higher priority now, I think, for my team if I was managing a marketing team. But also, like, what can you create from a content perspective that's not easily replicable in a small window in Google? So a comprehensive
Yeah, an
10-step guide.
experience, right? Yeah.
Yeah, interactive experiences, video, all those things that are harder to just answer in a snippet. But also
Yeah.
just thinking, like, what's our expertise? If you think about everything in a series, then if you're writing a guide, yeah, that first answer might be pushed into Google, but hopefully they're sourcing you. And if they do come to the site, now there's a 6-step series that you've written on this, with a video on this, with an interactive tool that can like
Yeah.
help me through the later stages of the journey I'm on. That's going to do better now than just writing like a bunch of top level content that got you traffic,
Right.
but maybe never converted all that well anyway.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're coming up on the end here. I guess very open-ended question, but what tools are the most important in your opinion right now for kind of modern marketing teams, not just to measure this stuff, but to be able to have some control over it? Like, what types of tools, what do they need to be thinking about that maybe has changed in the last 5 years?
Yeah, I think that the question a lot of marketing teams are probably getting asked is like, where are we showing up now? Like that there's like
Right.
Perplexity, there's Gemini, there's ChatGPT, all these different ways, Copilot, all these different ways that people can be asking questions to AI that your source might get used. So there are new tools that are getting pushed to the marketplace that are designed to measure that. SEM Rush is a tool that's trying to get in front of that, but there's also very niche tools like Zip Tie that I've been using myself that are really nice, that they get a nice overview of like, hey, our site is showing up here. Were we the source for this AI question? So that's a great way to sort of showcase like, hey, our traffic may have dropped from organic, but we're still being viewed. I think that's going to help marketing teams just showcase, yeah, maybe the way that we measure this changes. So tools that help you examine where you're being answered, featured snippets tools that are available in SEM Rush are going to help you say, oh, yeah, we've risen in ranks so high because we're such an authority that we're getting less traffic, but we're being shown constantly as a source here. I think those types of tools are going to be helpful. So SEMrush, Zip Tie, Google Search Console is always going to be really powerful, just because you're going to be able to see, like, just from an SEO perspective. But I think those AI tools are going to be more and more important to be able to track how search is being done, but also understanding intent. So like those are going to help you understand what are the questions they're asking, how are they asking it, how can we take the questions they're asking and put it into our content so they're directly answering that question is going to get more and more important. So
That's great. That's super helpful. Obviously, also who you work with is important here. You want to have a strategic partner. So
that's
if
right.
you've enjoyed the information Brandon shared, you want to talk more, learn about some of the work that we do with our clients on all these topics, definitely reach out to us, BlueModus.com. I'll also say, some of the stuff we talked about in the last 10 minutes or so about your website. It's certainly not less important. In some aspects, having an experience for your users, having a great site that's high performing and can handle more of an experience than just a static text-based website is more important than ever. So obviously at BlueModus, that's a huge part of what we do, is building these experiences for our clients with our incredible design team. the strategy, the digital marketing behind it, all of that. So we'd love to talk more about that with you guys. And then some of our partners like Kintico with their product Experience by Kintico is really cutting edge when it comes to managing your content for all the stuff that we're talking about, content hubs, on-page experiences. We'd love to talk more about that as well. But Brandon, this has been super, super informative. I know I've enjoyed it. I'm sure the viewers have as well. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.